Hey guys, it's Coach Gaglione here. This is another edition of the Powerlifting for the People podcast. This week we got another former intern on the line today. Kamali, how you doing?
I'm doing great, John. How you doing?
Awesome. So just wanted to, for people listening, can you just give us a brief rundown of who you are and then what you got going on right now?
Yeah. So I'm Kamali. I've been in the fitness, strength conditioning world since about 2014, 13ish. Right now, I'm preparing actually to make a move to Pittsburgh. I just accepted an assistant position at Robert Morris University to
Cool.
be an assistant strength coach with Robert Day, assisting with football, and then being the head strength coach for men's and women's lacrosse.
All right, very cool, my man. So yeah, I want to kind of get into your progression a little bit, but I want to rewind a little bit. So I know did an internship with us a couple years ago. So I just wanted to maybe just kind of recap, maybe like what was your kind of thought process and like why you wanted to like kind of come to us originally, and then maybe some of the things that you kind of learned like along the way.
Uh, I would say that when I started looking into it, I wasn't really sure what I was doing. I didn't really have like a mentor or any sort of direction, so I did what most people do and go online and went on Google and I started doing some research. And your name and your facility kept popping up. The more and more research I did on places in New York, on Long Island, where we're from, and the more and more I saw it, the more and more I read. I decided I'm like, hey, I'm gonna shoot this guy an email and see what I can do. Because I need to start somewhere. Because I met with my advisor at school, and she basically told me I need experience, so I need to go intern and I need experience. So, my mindset was like, okay, how can I make this work for me? And you being on Long Island and my parents living there just made it all too convenient. So I was just hopeful that you'd give me the opportunity.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's great. And so then, so as you kind of went through like the program, obviously, started kind of going through some different responsibilities, kind of like leading the warm up, some of the workouts. And I know you did some like lifting yourself, which is something we always encourage just so you kind of feel like the movements and stuff. So, what are some like kind of some I guess big takeaways that you learned, or some things that you kind of like got out of the program, like going through it?
I think it was my formal introduction into training, so it really set my foundation. So the stuff with the warm up was great. There's stuff in that warm up that I still use to this day. Whether I'm working with general population, or I'm working with an athlete. And just having that ability to lead a warm up is, I think people underestimate how difficult that can be when you've never done it before. So getting those reps early on when I was pretty young. I wasn't even 21 at the time, so to get those reps when I was super young was really, I think it's been really important in my development. And then the introduction to powerlifting as a sport was huge because it set the foundation for me to understand the basic foundational lifts across, across most training. You're going to see those big three lifts across most weight rooms. So to have an understanding of that, going back to college and then going on to the future positions I would work in, was huge because I would get places and other interns that I would work with, didn't necessarily have that foundation so early. So I think it kind of just gave me a little bit of a head start.
Cool. Yeah, I think it's interesting that you say that. I think that there's a big, especially when you're in like more of a collegiate setting or you're working with athletes, the ability to kind of command the room or kind of demand the attention of whether it be 10, 20, 30, or up sometimes even bigger groups depending on what your situation is. I know like when I got my start, I started also doing the sport training as well. I was a middle school wrestling coach for many years, and sometimes I would have like 30 or 40 seventh and eighth grade kids. I had to keep their attention, and that's like a unique skill set. And like you could have this great knowledge of like the mechanics and all the stuff, but just being able to kind of keep a group engaged and get them mentally ready and prepared for the workout, I think is something that kind of people miss. But yeah, I think it's cool that you kind of also like keyed in on the warm up, because even though like we're like a powerlifting gym and people definitely take like the movement preparation real serious, and I think that's a big part, and it kind of sets the tone for the day. And so now can you just tell us a little about like what you've been doing the last couple of years as far as the people that you've been working with, the athletes that you've been working with, and also because I know you mentioned like I said, powerlifting is a sport in itself, but obviously it gives you a great foundation for just building general strength as well. And maybe you could talk about how you can kind of utilize some of the things that you learned with some of the powerlifting program and how that kind of gets intertwined with some of the stuff that you're doing, whether it be like athletes or someone who's just maybe coming to you for general fitness.
Yeah. So since I left the internship, I've kind of had an interesting road. It's been nothing like I expected, but it's been great. I went back to college for that semester, finished up my degree, and then I went to Phoenix to intern at Exos, and that was an excellent experience. I think that was, doing your internship and their internship back to back really set my foundation for kind of who I am as a coach and how I train people. Because with you, it was like the importance of the fundamentals, and then with them, it was reinforcing those fundamentals, and then adding to my, the little the gap in my knowledge base that I had at the time. And I think that was like the perfect storm for me going forward. And since then, I've kind of taken both of those philosophies. Working with you, kind of introduced me to the powerlifting world, and introduced me to Westside Barbell and the kind of things that they do. And running a little bit of the conjugate method and things like that. So I've definitely with athletes I've worked with in the past, I've taken bits and pieces from that methodology and kind of used it to develop them. And then even with general population, sometimes I'll take little nuances from their training, the training philosophy, and add it into the workouts just to give them a little bit of different stimulus going forward. So I think it's been super beneficial going forward with all kinds of people that I've worked with, whether they be athletes or everyday people.
Cool. And then when you're like, I guess, if someone's kind of, I guess, you mentioned that you kind of did multiple internships and things like that. Maybe if someone's kind of getting started, what are some things that you felt were like really important, like during the internship that I guess you feel like that really kind of helped you start to use the knowledge to your advantage, and what are some things that people should like maybe look for when they're trying to apply for an internship or just get experience like in the field?
I think to me the thing that I would learn the most about was obviously training, but I think it was how to work with people. How to work with different kinds of people, because I mean, the array of people that do powerlifting is all over the map.
Sure.
So you get people from different walks of life. So understanding how to communicate with people, maybe you have to explain the same concept three different ways to three different people.
Yep.
And having that skill early on, I think really helped me going forward. As far as things to look for in an internship, I think you really want to look for a place that's going to educate you. That's what you're there for. You're there to learn. So you really want to focus on places that have, that have an idea of what they want you to do. You don't really want to go to a place where you're just kind of setting up, tearing down, and watching. You want to be actively involved, because people learn better. It's proven that people learn better when they're actively engaged. So you really want to kind of do a site visit first, is my recommendation, and kind of see how their interns there right now operate and what they do. And if you think that's enough of what you want to do, then go for it. I would always say, go to a place that wants you there, for one, and two, go to a place that's going to make you work. Make you work and educate you at the same time. Because once you get into coaching, it's constant work. There is no downtime. There is no I'm going to take this day off, or I'm going to relax this day. Like, it's constant work. So you have to get used to that. And I think a lot of young people don't understand that about the profession itself, regardless of what population you work with, whether it's general population, athletes, powerlifters, CrossFit, weightlifters. It's work across the board.
Yeah, sure. And then I know, like with us, like one of the things that we do, I know, like, and like I said, things probably it's been a bit, so things have definitely kind of evolved, and we've kind of added some different assignments and stuff. But I know, like, one of the things that we had you guys do, kind of we had some like books and stuff that we had you guys read. Also, kind of some of the training yourself. Was there anything that like particularly kind of stuck out for you, in particular, that you felt like got a lot out of? And then also like, I guess, what were some of your big takeaways of also just when you started to, like, I guess, kind of also train yourself, and then like using some of that information, like how did that kind of affect some of your coaching and cueing, like going through some of the movements like yourself and kind of learning to train, your own body and getting like your own workouts in?
I got you. Well, I'll start with that last question. I guess there's a lot to be said about the carryover of understanding what it feels like. And I think I didn't really understand what it felt like when I first got started. and I was kind of observing and listening. And then when I got more comfortable, and you guys got more comfortable with me, and I started training with you guys, then I started to kind of understand everything. And I had read your book, and I was reading your book, and then we were training together, and it kind of started to all make sense. We would have these talks, and you would explain the concepts to me, and then we would go and execute the concept. And it kind of opened me up to the idea, like, okay, reading it in a book isn't enough. Like, you have to actually go out and practice this, and you have to understand how it feels, because you can't necessarily coach it to the best of your ability if you don't really know how it's supposed to feel, or where guys or girls are supposed to create tension in their body and things like that. So I think that's that was probably one of the biggest things I took away from the internship, is that ability to kind of put some skin in the game and kind of get underneath the barbell and and feel what it feels like to pull 400 plus pounds off the ground.
Yeah.
And and really strain your body and know when enough's enough. I think a lot of people don't understand sometimes when enough is enough when you're training people.
Yeah, it's, I think it was one of the Michael Boyle put like a quote up the other day talking about, like, it was like Goldilocks and the Three Bears, and when it comes to training loads and things, like, you want it to be like just right, you want to kind of figure out that optimal training load. You don't want to be too heavy or too light, and depending on what the intent is, if you're trying to build more explosive strength or absolute strength, depending on the sport or whatever, like the intent is or the goal for today. So obviously, like a power lifter versus like a football player versus someone who's like a marathon runner, their demands are going to be different, to try to understand like where they're coming from and what their needs are, and make sure it's appropriate for them. But yeah, going through it yourself, I think, is key. You don't necessarily need to be like a world-class lifter or athlete or anything, but just kind of understanding what it feels like, understanding how to get your body in those positions, and you can kind of, I think it allows you to be a better coach, and you kind of understand like what the athlete is going through that much better. So I know one of the biggest sometimes misconceptions, I know like you talked about, it takes a lot of time. I know especially in the collegiate setting, sometimes you may be up like super early and then also working late at night. How do you kind of also like fit your training in now? Like, how has that changed over the years? I'm sure it's probably like more shorter, quicker workouts and things like that. So what do you kind of do for yourself currently?
Right now, I mean, over the years, it's definitely changed. I think my training has kind of developed as my training knowledge has developed. So every time I learn something new, I try and go apply it.
Nice.
So it's kind of like whatever it is I'm learning at the moment, or whatever I'm trying to figure out at the moment, is really what my training's around.
Yeah, sure.
So right now it's weightlifting. Actually, I'm really trying to key in on learning how to weightlift, effectively, and then so I can communicate it and train it effectively. So I've recently gotten into like overhead squatting and things like that. Things that you would never see in your gym, but certain things that are just that I may not be 100% comfortable with just yet, but I'm getting there.
Yeah.
So and those workouts are usually, I kind of keep them short. It's probably no more than like 35 minutes. It's a quick hard warm up, and then you get right to it. Kind of meat and potatoes kind of training.
Yeah, cool. I think that's a good point, especially if you're going to be, if depending on if you're a head strength coach or an assistant strength coach, or if you're working for another facility, whether it's private, collegiate, etc., high school setting, every coach is going to have different philosophies. So, like, if you go to one college, they might be really big on like weightlifting. Another, college might be big on doing more powerlifting movements, or maybe other, might be use more kettlebells or calisthenics. And so I think it's kind of good to like have all these different tools in your toolbox and kind of learn how to implement them. Obviously, like, squatting, benching, deadlifting, and like rowing and things like that are going to be like your foundation no matter what you do. But yeah, like learning how to like clean and snatch and maybe do kettlebell exercises and swings and things like that, and pull-ups and push-ups and more calisthenics. I think the more tools you have in your toolbox, the more efficient you could be. You can kind of adjust in the situation. So if you get thrown into a setting where they're really big on like doing weightlifting movements and more like cleans and things like that, you're going to have like some of that experience, and you're going to be more effective, and you're going to be more of an asset to that program. So I know, like with myself, like we don't do too much weightlifting, but in the rare case, sometimes I might get like a collegiate football player, and they may actually get like tested with like a hang clean or a clean from the floor or something like that. So I just want to make sure, like, at least they are going to be able to kind of, when they go off to school, they're going to be kind of prepared for whatever like program that they that they do. Even if we don't necessarily maybe believe in it or whatever the case may be, it's just good for them to be exposed to it if they're going to be doing it anyway, and they can do it more safely and effectively. So I think that's cool to be like open minded, and I think it's really important, like I said, to practice it yourself, and that's going to make you like a better coach in the long run and make you more of like an asset, more valuable to whatever like kind of program that you end up doing. So I think that's great advice for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Being a well-rounded coach is very, very, very much so not the trend. I think a lot of people try to find a niche because everyone's trying to get a job. So everyone wants to find something that's going to have them stand out. So some guys are speed guys, some guys are purely strength guys. But I think that it's really good to be well-rounded. You don't necessarily have to be an expert in everything, but understand everything enough to apply it. I think that'll take your career a lot further early on than just saying, oh, I just want to study specifically this or specifically that. Unless you specifically want to be a powerlifting coach or you want to be a sprint coach. Then absolutely go in that direction. But I think being a well-rounded coach, it can also help you in all those things too.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of like almost like when you're training athletes, we talk about like you don't want to like early specialize too soon, right? So
Yeah.
I think the same thing applies to coaching. Like if you even like for me, like I always kind of go back to powerlifting just because that's what I'm the most proficient in, and also I just believe it's obviously for building strength. Whether it be a barbell, a kettlebell, or whatever, like I think doing those kind of big compound movements has such like a high carryover to anything. So I always, but I've done strongman competitions, I've done kettlebell competitions, I've done a lot of work with weightlifting. Never compete. I never did. Maybe never say never, but never did a weightlifting meet. I never could quite get my my front.
I would love to see that.
Maybe never say never. It's probably like a bucket list thing, but I still have a lot of unfinished business in powerlifting still, but I'd like to. I'd never say never because I've done like different things. But yeah, that'd be cool. I never couldn't get my front rack quite to where it was really efficient. But like I said, I'll try anything once, and I think it's important to kind of go through that. I mean, I even did. I was very beat up from it. But I even did 2 months of like pretty dedicated CrossFit training, like right when I started like my weight loss stuff, just to kind of like try it and to see, and you can like learn. Like I said, now I'm implementing a little bit more like yoga and stuff, and more so for like down regulation, not really for necessarily crazy like intense hard poses or anything. But I think the more you can kind of learn, and you could obviously take that Bruce Lee mentality, kind of absorb what's useful and then kind of reject what's not. I think it's a really good approach, and especially when you're younger, I think the more of these movements and the more of these different methodologies you can be exposed to, and then eventually you can maybe specialize a little bit, or if you decide to take a private, like I have a private facility, so obviously I'm like 100% in control, whereas if you're a collegiate strength coach, you have to also, you're dealing with the administration, you're dealing with the sport coach, and you want to make everyone happy, so there's other kind of things to consider. So it just really depends on your situation, or if you're working for somebody else, obviously they're going to probably have their own methodology, and you want to be on the same page with everyone. So I think that's really, really good advice. So just to kind of piggyback on that and just kind of moving forward, like I said, for the people that are listening that maybe they want to become a coach or they're not really sure like what steps to take, do you have some like general advice for people that are starting out? Some other some take. I know there's like so much, but like, is there any like things that have really helped you excel?
Yeah. The more and more I think about it, I think trust your gut. I think a lot of people are, and myself included, you seek out advice. You always seek out advice. I think you trust your gut and your instinct. But there's obviously the traditional pathway. If you want to be, let's say, a collegiate strength coach, you got to do an unpaid internship or maybe multiple unpaid internships, and then from there, maybe a graduate assistantship, and then a full-time job or a part-time job. That's the traditional progression. It doesn't always work like that. My progression didn't work like that. I know plenty of coaches whose progressions didn't work like that. It's really about how much work you put into it. The effort you put into communicating with people, reaching out to coaches, building relationships, getting mentors. I think that's huge. Getting someone that you can kind of lean on to kind of ask, like, hey, what do you think about this opportunity, or what do you think I should do next? Getting advice from someone who's been there is very big. But also understanding at the end of the day, you have to make the best decision for you. So, you may see a job posted in California that looks awesome at a big time university or a big time facility, but financially, you go out there, it's gonna be a strain. You have to think about these things. I think those are a lot of things people have to consider. Also, the real life ramifications of coaching. It's not the most glamorous job in the world. So you have to understand that there's going to be some financial hardship that comes along with doing this if you're going to go all in on it. So that's also something to consider. But yeah, reaching out to coaches and getting experience. Go out there and try and get as much coaching experience as you can, because that's the only way you're really going to get better, and people are going to offer you positions or even offer you interviews if you have hands-on coaching experience.
I think that's great advice. And one thing I just want to kind of harp on too is I think this day and age with technology, we have all this information at our fingertips, and it can be really hard to sift through all this stuff. But like you mentioned before, it's one thing like reading it in a book. It's one thing watching a YouTube video. It's another thing like actually physically going to a facility, physically doing a seminar, physically training under a coach, or physically mentoring with somebody. I think a lot of like this next generation needs to remember, like, don't be afraid to kind of go that old school route and actually, like I said, shoot a coach a message, go and visit. Like I said, when I started out, I just volunteered at my old high school, and I just helped out like with the weight room, and that was like something I did for free, just to gain experience helping the younger kids out. I visited like Westside Barbell and all these other places, and like Mike Boyle and Eric Cressy and like all these places all over the Northeast. I would sometimes drive. It might be like I remember when I went up to visit Mike Boyle. It was like probably over 7 years ago now at this point, and I remember it was a snowstorm. It took me like 6 hours to get there, and it was like crazy. But like I just wanted to make sure I was getting a well-rounded education, and I was learning from everybody. And ironically enough, like someone like Mike Boyle is actually a great example, because traditionally someone who maybe kind of would bash on or talk like a barbell squat or like a box squat and things that I love, but like I think it's important to learn from everybody. Even if you don't necessarily agree with 100% of what they're saying, let's see, like, take what's good again and then apply it to what your program and what your philosophy is. So I think that's great advice. And just be patient. You're not going to make $1 million, your first year, for sure, and especially in the collegiate setting. But if you have a passion for it, and I think if you love helping people, it's definitely a very fulfilling job. I know. So like I said, I couldn't. So I'm sure you could, say the same thing when you see like your athletes progress and reach their goals. It's definitely makes you feel really good that you were like a part of that process, for sure, and definitely makes it worth it, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, in the collegiate setting, you probably spend the most time with the athletes. So you get to know them really well. So you build those relationships, and they're meaningful relationships. And when they progress and when they they graduate, or they win something. They achieve something or get some sort of accolade, it's a very gratifying feeling. So it makes the job very much worth it. So I think anyone that's looking to get into it, understand that it may not be the most financially, great, beneficial job, but it also is probably the most emotionally beneficial job, because you get to help people achieve their goals and really achieve their dreams. So a lot of kids, their goal is to be an NCAA champion or an All-American, things like that. And I think, the same thing in the powerlifting world. You get people that come in that don't realize that they want to be powerlifters until they get into it. And now they want to compete, and they want to, they have these benchmarks they want to reach, and then they reach them. Yeah. It's an amazing feeling that you were able to help them get there.
Yeah, it's especially, it's kind of like, it's definitely a little bittersweet, and I'm sure it's the same thing for, for some of the people that you work with, but especially like with powerlifting, it's like, you have these like those 9 lifts, and like it's maybe it's just a couple of seconds on the platform for each lift, but when you hit that, like you see your lifter like hit a personal record or like a new milestone, it's like you train for months and months for that single moment, and it's like this amazing like high, and then it's like, okay, and then back to the drawing board. But it's an amazing feeling, and I definitely wouldn't trade it for anything else, and it's awesome to kind of be a part of that. So. Awesome, man. Well, it's great. It sounds like you're doing really well. I'm happy to see. Like I said, for one of the reasons that I'm kind of selfishly doing this, also to it's kind of an excuse to catch up with some of you guys that have kind of gone through the program. It always makes me feel good to have you guys actually be like working in the field after, because like I said, we could have this intern program, and it's obviously great to mentor people and get like some help at the gym. But it makes me even feel better when I actually see we have like a lot of people that are still active in the field and progressing, and that makes me feel like really good. So I appreciate you taking the time today. So if anyone was maybe like on the fence of like doing our internship or just like maybe getting into the field, like what's some, like, I guess some last words of advice of what you can kind of tell them?
I would say, if you're looking to get a head start, I think you can't go wrong. It's going to be a great foundation. It's going to teach you everything you need to know to move on to whatever that next step's going to be, whether it's a job or whether it's another internship, in the private or the collegiate setting. I think you won't find a better place to set you up for the future.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate the kind words, and I know, like I said, it's a little bit different with what you do. But if someone wanted to reach out to you, or if they wanted to, like, I guess, follow you on, if there any place that people could reach you or find you, if they want to, I guess, maybe ask you a question or reach out to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Twitter. Kamali O'Brien. You can just find me on there. I'm not real super active with posting, but I do check it. So you can definitely shoot me a DM and I'll answer it as soon as I can.
Cool.
And if you want to shoot me an email, it's just kamaliobrien@gmail.com, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can.
Awesome, man. Well, I'm looking when you're back on the East Coast, definitely come say hello. I actually been doing. I know like Pittsburgh is that what you said? Pittsburgh, you're going to be?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but definitely if you're ever kind of visiting family and stuff, definitely come say hello. We'd love to catch up more. And like I said, we wish you the best of luck. And if you need anything in the future, definitely don't hesitate to contact us for sure. So, but I appreciate you coming on the call today.
All right, John. Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for everything.
Awesome. So, guys, if for those that are listening, definitely if this interview helped you, please give the podcast a 5-star review. It helps other people find us. You can also subscribe. It's Powerlifting for the People on iTunes. If you want to support the program, you can check out the links in the description. And until next time, stay strong, and we'll see you soon.